Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio. Faisal Susiwala joins us today on Ask the Experts. He's been serving the Waterloo region since 1988. He's the broker of record with Remax Twin City, recently named the top selling agent in Canada. He's also recognized as the number one individual Remax agent worldwide. Faisal is the author of the book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker, and we can always count on him to have his finger on the pulse of the real estate market. Thanks so much for joining us today, Faisal.
Thanks for having me on, Brock.
It's always a great time to have a chat. I know that the last time we were talking, we got into a whole bunch of different topics, which was amazing, and I'm hoping to get there as well today. The one key thing that you had touched on back about a month ago was this idea of you said we're kind of in a bit of uh, a hangover, I think was the term that you used when we're talking about local markets. Starting off in January, we're coming into this brand new year. Are we still there, or in your mind, are we starting to get back on our feet?
It's interesting. January and February, I think that hangover continued. Now that we're into March, we're seeing some light in the market right now. We're seeing activity starting. We're seeing a lot of movement. So I would say January and February, that 600 to 850 price range was moving fairly well. And then anything above that really wasn't. So that was the lag. And now, of course, those people that were selling in that price point were either buying up or downsizing, maybe going into a rental. So now we're seeing that 850 to $1.2 million market moving fairly well. So we're seeing a lot more inventory hitting the market right now. There has been a lot of uncertainty, as we know, in the market, and that kept people on the sidelines. But we're certainly seeing people doing things now that they weren't doing before. They're starting to enter the market, getting qualified, and all of the stuff that we're hearing in the news and whatnot will have an impact on it. But we're certainly seeing the market pick up now.
Great information to start off with, and listeners, I meant to mention off the top. Once we get to the end of the show, if you want to get any more information on any of the topics we're discussing over the next hour, we're going to get through a bunch of them today. You can reach out to Faisal. You can start your journey at homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or by email, faisal@homeshack.com. But that gives you just a little taste of the kinds of things that Faisal and I will be talking about. I know that when we take a look at interest rates, and we had a decent move in 2024. We've started off January of 2025 moving in the same direction. What are you looking at projection wise when it comes to moving through the rest of the year? I know there's so many things that are up in the air right now, but what do you see happening, and what's the good news? We want to get to the good news for sure.
So we had the December rate cut. We had the January rate cut. We just had the recent one in March here. So now we're seeing the rates coming down. We're seeing the Bank of Canada continuing to drop the rates. And from what we understand and what the economists are telling us, this will, we're at 2.75. This could be 2.5% at the next April meeting. I believe April 16th is the next rate announcement. Continuing through to July, it's not unlikely that the rates will hit, the Bank of Canada prime will hit 2%. Bank of Montreal has come out and said that that's what their expectation is. So that is really good news. And we're in a very interesting time right now that typically when you see rate cuts occurring, prices start really starting to go up, but we're not seeing that in the market. So there's a lot of external influences and factors that are impacting what is happening in our market. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit more in the show, but just sticking to interest rates right now. And to those who are thinking about buying and say, well, I'll wait for more rate cuts, that's great. But I don't think that there's any value in waiting any longer. In fact, the opposite. We haven't seen prices go up right now. So when the rates are going down and prices are not going up, that's a pretty good formula to enter the market because you can enjoy the price appreciation When that gets absorbed into the market and people start saying, oh, wait a minute, this is really affordable now at 2.9%. So I better jump into the market. That's when you're going to see the prices start climbing and the barriers of entry are going to be greater at that point. So if you're in a position to buy right now, and as I've been saying, stick to variable right now, stick to a 2 or 3 year variable rate. You can't go wrong with that. It's pretty much even to that 5% mortgage. And of course, speak to your financial advisor that can coach you on that. But personally speaking, that's what I would be doing right now is follow the rate trend down and get into the market while the prices are still very affordable compared to what we have seen in the past few years.
And it is good news. I know that one of the things that we've talked about before the show and the last time we were together as well, um, that idea of tariffs, for example, it rents a lot of space in our heads these days. When it comes to looking at the real estate market and looking at our economy as well, any insights into what you see happening? I know that we've often talked about the fact that what happens in the south of the border often it echoes here north of the border. What are you and you're looking back through your experience? What are you thinking is going to be happening next?
Well, not to get too political, but let's get political.
All right, let's do it.
Like Mr. Trump, it's a horse and pony show. Every day it's a new on a whim, whatever comes to his mind, he's spewing it out. And Canada has been grappling with economic self-doubt. So we're seeing the impact of that translate into day to day. And what we're finding right now is uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, people tend to do nothing. And these tariffs are causing uncertainty because there's no real definition on either side as to what is going to happen. We are going through a government change and transitioning from that perspective. So a lot of this is having a lot of impact. And people are not so much, and as we talked about interest rates, why are prices not going up even though interest rates are going down? Because now it's not about interest rates. It's about job security. It's about stability in where they're at. Like, do I want to take on higher debt, not knowing if in our region, manufacturing is huge. So if manufacturing slows down, layoffs occur, job losses occur, that's going to stop a lot of people from entering the market, and they would just rather pause than to do something right now. We're seeing whatever is happening is impacting the Americans just as much as it is impacting us. Their cost is going to go up. Inflation is going to be an all-time high. All of this was going to start playing out, and we're not going. I don't, like nothing good is really. You've seen what it's doing to the stock market.
Mhm.
We're up 3%, we're down 6%. We're up 2%, we're down 5%. Each day, something new is happening. And I just want to go back to 2018 and 2019. Trump had imposed 25% on steel, and I believe it was 10% on aluminum. And at that point, Canada and Mexico had retaliated, and then he retreated and he took away the tariffs. And then he came back in 2019 and added some more back on. So this is a back and forth type of thing. So again, is it going to stick? Probably not. Is this sustainable? No. But will he do what he wants to do? Probably. So we are just dealing with a lot of uncertainty in the market. It will slow things down. It will create a lot of doubt on both sides of the border. And we're seeing that play out. Investors are staying out of the market right now because their disposable cash may not be available. They're not getting the equity that they want out. Their money's tied up in stocks. They can't liquidate. So all of this is having an impact on what we do. Not to mention the cost of construction and lumber and steel. And so we're going to see our new home construction come to a grinding halt if these tariffs do in fact follow through.
And I think we've talked about this in the past too, that, if Mr. Trump has decided to do things differently and play the game by different rules, and no one else has been told what those rules are, then this is sometimes you do have to step back from that game and say, maybe there's other people that we can be playing with right now, and looking at trade diversification either across through the provinces and the territories or looking at other countries around the world when it comes to who can we be building with. It's made sense over the last 80 to 100 years to trade with our partner that's so close. But if the rules are changing and Mr. Trump seems to be changing them on a daily basis, then it might be time for us to instead of reacting all the time, we've got to start and be a little more proactive. It's not as easy as that. I know it's a lot more difficult than making a few changes, but this is where we're at right now. I remember I was listening to our new prime minister, Mr. Carney, who mentioned, he said we can't change Donald Trump, and I think that's true. What we have to do is change how we're going to respond to that, and I think you're on the right track with that as well too.
Yeah, and we have to become far more self-sufficient. We need to start doing things more internally. And I think Mr. Trump is delusional in thinking that he has a lot of friends around the world that like Finland. Finland just told him he can't have eggs. So I don't know where he's going to get his eggs from now.
Maybe he's listening to the show. If he's ever tuning in, we'll make sure we've got some advice from him.
Let's
Listen,
tag him on our social media.
we can do that for sure. We're coming up on a break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, real estate or Bitcoin. We're going to have a chat with Faisal about that. Stay with us here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show. My guest today, Faisal Susiwala, recently named as the #1 Remax agent worldwide in terms of sales volume and number of homes sold. If you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly at 519-624-5555 or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. Every time we get a chance to chat, I feel like Faisal gives us some of the best financial advice, and it's always timely. Faisal, in your pre-show notes, rather, you mentioned the benefits of investing in real estate rather than, say, Bitcoin. Maybe you can walk us through what you're thinking on that. I'm sure a lot of younger people out there right now are thinking, no, Bitcoin's the way to go. But in the long run, I think you're right when it comes to real estate is gonna beat out Bitcoin every time.
It is, it's trendy.
Yeah.
And I take a lot of heat from especially my younger friends that are really sold on this whole Bitcoin thing. Look, it's tangible versus non-tangible. That's the bottom line. Can you see it, hold it, feel it? Is it recognized? Is it a tradable? And is it volatile? And
Right.
what we're seeing is that real estate is tangible, income generating asset. People will always need places to live.
Yeah.
When it comes down to, housing, real estate is where it's at. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is speculative with no
Yeah.
intrinsic value backing it. So there's no gold standard or the Bank of Canada backing it or the Bank of US. And again, Trump talks about it once in a while and say it'll be recognized. But real estate provides stability. The values trend upwards due to population growth, land scarcity. Bitcoin is just volatile. We're seeing this
Mm.
the flow in the market, the swing that we're seeing in the market right now. You're up 20%. Next day you're down 20%. Okay, in real estate, you might be up 3 to 5%, down 3 to 5%, but the trajectory over time is always up due to scarcity and demand and population growth. So there's value in that. And if you put your thoughts together, like if you sell Bitcoin, someone else needs to buy it, right? And it's the
Mhm.
value that they're going to put on that. And that could be said for real estate as well, but is it a tangible? That's the thing. And again, there's great arguments on both sides of it. With real estate, there's still cash flow possibilities. You
Mhm.
invest your money and you're getting a rate of return. You could rent out the property, whereas Bitcoin only makes money when it's sold. There's no passive income generated through Bitcoin. So you can leverage your real estate asset. If you've got a home or a property or any sort of real estate, you can leverage that, put a mortgage against it, finance it up to 80%, take the funds out and regenerate that into another investment. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's not financeable. You have to sell it, right? So it's not really a long-term wealth building proposition. And then, of course, you got to look at the tax advantages. Real estate wins again. mortgage interest deduction, depreciation, capital gains exemptions, whereas Bitcoins is just capital gains taxes without the benefits. And again, you look at the inflation, real estate only appreciates, but it also allows rent increases, right? So you can
Right.
start
Right.
building up on that. So there's a lot of different arguments on both ends of it. Obviously, I'm very much a real estate of a person, and I don't believe in buying Bitcoin. I like to see my assets. I don't want it somewhere in digital land that I lose a password and can't access. I know there's safeguards against that now, but again, you look at what is tangible, what's in front. Can you see it, feel it, drive by it, walk in it, live in it? I think it's a no for all of those when it comes to Bitcoin.
And you're on. We're cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways, and same vintage sort of thing. I thought it was interesting last week where the price of gold went up over $3,000 for the first time ever. But it's the same sort of thing. It's tangible, and I think when there is worry in the markets or when there's uncertainty, you go to the things that you know will have always carried value, and real estate is one of them. Gold, as I was saying, silver, the prices of those kinds of things are going up and up. I think that's important for us to keep that in mind. Yeah, I'm in the same mindset. I can't if I can't pick up a Bitcoin and I can't, it just doesn't fit in my brain. I don't know. I've had my younger, my children explain it to me, but I'm still I'm old school. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm
If
glad you brought up gold because if you look back to anyone that came from a war-torn region, whether it was the Middle East or wherever it was, those who had physical gold were able to take that gold out of their countries, maybe buy themselves out of the country or buy themselves out of a situation because they had physical gold. Well, you're not going to have a Bitcoin wallet to give to the border crossing and
that's
say,
right.
here's a Bitcoin, let me cross the border. So something tangible like gold, like real estate that you can trade or use, it's always going to win. It's always going to trump any digital currency, in my opinion.
Good information to have out there. If we stick with this theme of real estate, I noticed Remax brushing off its and revamping its logo lately, and this idea of keeping up with the branding. What's happening at Remax?
Well, it's sort of the evolution of branding, and Remax has always been well known by its balloon.
Yep.
The new sort of branding is more digital friendly, to be able to go on social media, on digital marketing that we see, whereas the previous branding was more paper. So if you look at products like Apple Computer, you'll see that it's just the Apple. It doesn't say Apple on it. It doesn't have any graphics other than sort of the digital Apple. And that's kind of the trend. And it's just to basically, it's a very recognizable brand already. And
Yep.
the consumers are really taking to it from the studies that have been done. So we're excited about our new brand. We're excited about the new logo and the theme that it has. And it's certainly got a very modern feel. And I think like in anything, change is not always readily accepted. So we're seeing some both inside the companies and outside some opinions on it. But I think over time, it will be widely accepted as a good move for Remax.
And keeping up with the times. I mean, you think of a letter M, and all you think of is McDonald's. That I think Remax's logo is very similar in that it is recognizable. So if you can tweak a little bit and you can update it and make it a little bit more easy to work with from that digital standpoint, it's a great idea.
Yes.
I know we've talked about this in the past, Faisal, that you've been working with individuals and families for decades. You've been around for a lot of life celebrations, but ultimately, you've also been there at the end of some people's journeys. When you're dealing with estate sales, this word probate comes up, and you've called it nasty. Maybe you can walk us through and maybe put some people's minds at ease that might be dealing with something like this right now.
Yeah, there's not a clear understanding on the processes. And of course, we've talked about this in the past where it's not an easy conversation to sit down with your family and talk about estate and wills and what happens when I die and who gets what and all this type of stuff. So, in Canada, and specifically in Ontario, probate is the legal. So we hear this word probate. So, I can't sell right now because I got to clear probate. So what does this mean? And I think it's important to have an understanding of what it means and not to be scared by it, but it is sort of like one of those processes that you have to go through. So it's a process in which the court confirms the validity of a deceased person's will and authorizes the executor to distribute their assets. Okay, so you have to go through this process. If someone passes away, with the will must go through the probate before assets can be distributed. So it's still a process you have to, so you can't say, well, I've got a will, I don't have to worry about this. And a lot of people will put their house on the market and the probate hasn't been done. So at closing,
Mm,
you can't really transfer title because the executor doesn't actually have the right to do so. Again, speak to your lawyer, get legal advice on this, and get a better understanding of what I'm saying here. Now, even if you have a will, your estate must go through probate unless the assets are held in a trust or a joint ownership. And that process, again, is a little bit different. Now, the cost of probate in Ontario, and it varies from province to province. It's called the estate administration tax, and the
right.
tax is calculated at 1.5% on the first $50,000 of the estate value, and another 1.5% on the value over $50,000. So
Okay.
you'll have to sort of do the math here. For example, if the estate is worth $200,000, the probate fee would be $3,000,
Right.
and the fee can add up and reduce the value of the estate. So that would come off of the estate. Okay. So call it roughly 1.5% of the value of the estate is what you're going to end up paying for probate. So at that point, you would get an appraiser, a realtor, someone to tell you, okay, here's mom and dad's house. They've passed on. They left it to the family. What's it worth? It's worth $600,000. Okay, well, at that point, the probate fee is going to be $9,000, for example. Again, your lawyer can do the calculations and give you accurate numbers. I'm just sort of giving you an example of what it is. Who pays it? The executor or the estate administrator is responsible to pay it, but of course, it comes out of the funds that were left behind. And this is again, it's very important to have a will so that everything is
Right.
defined, like including who the executor is going to be, because you don't want to get into a scramble to say, well, who's the executor, who's going to be handling all of this. And the probate process can take several months to over a year, depending on the complexity of the estate and the potential disputes. And of course, we don't know what the backlogs are. So
Right. Right.
if somebody challenges the estate, that can, of course, take even longer to settle.
Good information to have. And as you said, not always easy topics to discuss, but they are important topics to discuss as well, too. Um, we'll take a quick break. We'll get an update from the 570 News Center. When we come back, it's tax season, so get ready to do your homework. Stay with us here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Faisal Susiwala, also known as the top real estate broker in the world for REMAX. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, Faisal@homeshack.com. Before the break, Faisal, we were talking about that idea of probate and having discussions that aren't always easy ones to have with our families when it comes to real estate. If we keep with that theme of paperwork and kind of getting all those things in place, you mentioned the idea that it's a great idea to have a will in place, but really that's just your start. You also wanted to talk a little bit more about the importance of a power of attorney. So I'm going to turn things over to you for that.
Yes, absolutely. So, like many people think having a will is enough to protect their interests, right? And that's not enough. Because what if
Right.
something happens to you while you're still alive, but
Hmm.
you're not in a position to make a decision? You're incapacitated due to illness, injury, or age-related issues. So, a power of attorney ensures that someone you trust can make decisions on your behalf. And many people think because they have a will, they're all set. Well, no. The power of attorney is equally as important, just over things like your bank account. Um, if you've got funds in your bank account that maybe other family members are counting on using, either for yourself or for their support, they will have no access, especially if if they're dependent on you and something happens to you, well, they're going to be in a lot of difficult times trying to
Mhm.
get any of the release of your money or make decisions on your behalf while you're incapacitated. So, with the power of attorney, your loved ones may have to go through without it. Will have to go through a lengthy process, expensive court process to gain control over your finances and even over your medical care. So and you don't want to be going through a lengthy court process if you need medical attention. You need someone to be able to make the decision for you. So it just gives you
So,
some peace of mind and it gives you that ability to hand your affairs over to someone that can handle it, that you can trust. So I wouldn't wait on getting that. In fact, if you're buying a home, you're a senior lawyer, that's the time. Get your power of attorney done, get your will done, make sure all of your affairs are in order. But again, like I always say, seek legal advice on any of the things that you're hearing, because your lawyer can basically assess your situation, tell you what the right thing is to do.
great idea, and it as you were saying, it's one more step, but it's an important step as well too, because we know how important or how often emotion plays when people are making family decisions and all of those other things. So if there's something in writing and a power of attorney's been put in place, then that makes the life a little bit easier for everybody else, and it kind of keeps the waters steady as you're moving forward. We know March is quickly coming to an end, Faisal. So April's around the corner. A lot of us might be scrambling to get our taxes done before the end of April. When it comes to and we've talked about this in the past as well too. I know you've got some great advice for people, and maybe you want to walk us through what are those key things that people should be keeping in mind this time of year.
It's just important to start gathering your receipts. Like you don't want to be scrambling at the very last minute to find all your receipts, all your so things like your if you're self-employed, you want to make sure you have all of your ongoing business expenses, medical expenses, if you don't have a drug plan, any donations that you made throughout the year. And I believe it's $20. Anything over $20 that you've donated is you get a tax receipt for. So keep track of that. Make sure you get, and with the Canada Post strike, some of those receipts may have been delayed. So make sure you keep a track of where you had donated, what fees you had paid out. Make sure you get your receipts. Make sure you get your banking receipts, both income and expenses. Childcare, a lot of people forget about those union dues. So anything that has the ability to be written off or reduce your income, this is the time to be gathering those and get those uploaded or give them to your accountant so that you have them ready to go. So April 30th is the deadline for most filers. Anybody that is self-employed has until June 16th. So 2 dates to really keep in mind. If you owe taxes, your interest will start as of April 30th. So a lot of people don't
Right.
realize you better pay your taxes now and not wait, say, well, I can wait until whenever, because the government will start loan sharking you the minute you're late. So don't wait on that. And for those of us who have taxable RSP contribution limits, make sure you maximize that. Just whatever you can. And I know the government had made some exemptions. Now, what's interesting is that the planned capital gains tax increase is now delayed
Okay.
until 2026, meaning 50% of the gains remain taxable for now, not the increased amount that they were going to tax. So just be mindful of that. And again, with the government changes, who knows what happens? Are they going to keep it at 50% or are they going to go to 75%? We don't know, or two-thirds, whatever the numbers are, we don't know. Whatever you do, make sure you file your income tax because you know those
Hmm.
nice child tax benefits, the HST rebate, the carbon tax rebate. I think that's going to be gone, but whatever it is, whatever rebates that you get, that $80 check or $140 check or whatever the amount is, if you don't file your income tax, those checks will not come. So you might think, oh, I don't really owe any money, so I'm just not going to file or I've got lots of time. Well, by not filing, even if you don't owe money, you're actually missing out on the rebates because they don't have a record that you filed. Therefore, you're not going to get your rebate. So be mindful of that. Even if you don't owe money, make sure you file on time.
And I know in the pre-show notes you talked about the fact, there's over 400 tax credits that are out there. So do your homework. I mean, and there's no one that's going to tell you necessarily, hey, you qualify for this all the way along. It's due diligence. You've got to sit down and make those things happen. And Faisal's absolutely right. File your taxes. Really, the best thing that should be happening. I know a lot of people want to get they want to get that big rebate check, but that's your money, right? You should have had that all the way along. So if you come out at zero, then and everything kind of balances out, that's good, and you get the benefit of all of those other rebates as you're going along. I know that we've talked about this from both sides of the coin before. The idea of landlords and tenants, and that there are clashes sometimes. There's also that we hear those stories where tenants have been in the building for 30 years and everything's just great. But in the notes you were talking about a new platform that's coming up that's available, so that when things aren't going well, there's a way to a way to move things forward. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to speak with and interview the co-founder of openroom.ca, and it's actually on my social media channels. If you get a chance, please go on there and take a look at it, the full interview, and it's also on YouTube. But openroom.ca is a platform dedicated to enhancing transparency in Canada's rental ecosystem. And what it does, it allows landlords to now report those who are not paying their rent, and it will then negatively impact those folks' credit. So now other landlords, and it's basically a directory of
Okay.
what has been going on, what the landlord tenant board rulings are. So you can go in, type in someone's name, and find out if they're a good tenant or a bad tenant. Have they had issues before? There was approximately $267 million in unpaid rents across the landlord
Wow.
tenant bat just in Ontario between 2021 and 2025. So can you imagine the
Yeah.
amount of rent that has, and that's all still sort of working through the system.
Unreal.
In May 2024 update, we found from Open Room that the average landlord was out about $16,000 in rent, and that
Boy.
has increased 27% year over year since 2021. So we're seeing a lot of people getting away without paying rent. It's almost a sense of entitlement. Well, you're
Mm.
the landlord, you got lots of money. Well, the problem is that landlord still has a mortgage to pay. And the
Yeah.
bank is not as forgiving as the landlord tenant board is and giving you 11 months to get to a hearing. They want their pound of flesh now, and if they don't get it, they're going to repossess your property, and your credit's going to be shot, and your ability to buy, I mean, could force you into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So it's very important. And again, the platform is not just pro landlord. It's also for tenants to see who the bad landlords are. Who are the ones
Mhm.
that are slumlords, who don't repair their buildings, who don't take care of things. So all of the rulings and the hearings are listed on there. The findings are on there. You kind of it's a great platform in my opinion. So it's called openroom.ca. I was very excited to learn about this platform. As a landlord, I'd like to obviously research who my bad tenants are before I
Mhm.
put them into my unit and then inherit a problem. So again, these are all good ways, and there's a lot of transparency that's still needed. Um, I think the ability to report non-payment of rent to Equifax or TransUnion is a great option to keep people a little bit more mindful about paying their rent on time as they would their, Visa bill or their Canadian Tire bill.
And we've talked about this in the past as well too, that if you are a good tenant, or you've been a good tenant, but you all of a sudden you find yourself in financial straits and difficulties, have a conversation with your landlord. I mean, that that you can't bury your head in the sand. You can't just say, "Well, I'm not going to pay my rent." You entered into an agreement with someone, and whether it's you are friends or not, or whatever it happens to be, there's, at the end of the day, bills have to be paid and all of these other things. But if you have those conversations, and you're free to have that communication with each other, you're able to move in the right direction. It's not easy, but I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if in the long run you want to make you want to be known as a good tenant. No matter where you are, so I'm glad that you've brought that up, Faisal. Let's take a final break here and ask the experts. When we come back, looking outside right now, it might not mean much, but we're going to talk a little bit about preventative measures before our next snow season. You're listening to Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show. My guest today has been Faisal Susiwala, also known as the top real estate broker in the world for RE/MAX. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. Faisal, a few weeks back, I found myself somewhere I didn't expect to be at the age I'm at right now. It's a much younger person's game. And that's on the top of a ladder, hammering away at an ice dam up on our roof. We've got three lovely skylights in our home. The problem is, when the snow melts and then it refreezes, it always puddles right below the lowest skylight. And there's always a risk of leaks. So I went up there with a friend. My friend's a little bit more agile than I am. He hammered away at it. We got the thing cleared off. But I know that even though we're right on the tail end of that kind of weather, it's always a good idea. And this is a topic I thought we'll bring in, sort of a preventative tip for when this stuff rolls around again. What do we need to know?
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about snow and ice now that we're getting sunshine and nicer weather. But this is the exact time that we need to talk about it, because the preventative stuff that we do now, and you might have more energy right now with the weather getting better to get into your attic, adding that insulation, making sure that the vents are not blocked, that there's good air circulation. So that's what causes these ice dams. You drive down the street and you see these massive icicles, and they look great on the house, but it's not so great
Hmm.
for the homeowner, because what's going to happen, it's going to creep up in underneath the shingle through the plywood and start leaking into the house down the wall. And the amount of damage that water can cause can sometimes be worse than fire, really. So you've got to
Yeah.
be very careful in making sure that you are doing the preventive, like the insulation. So if you're getting this abundance of icicles building up, there's a problem in your attic, first of
Yeah.
all. There's improper ventilation, not enough insulation, or maybe with wind and sometimes rodents, whatever it may be, the insulation gets blown around depending on the type of
Yeah.
insulation you have. So it's good to, poke your head up inside the attic, see what's going on in there, because the heat from your home melts the snow on your rooftop, creates it, makes it water, then it refreezes, then it creeps up underneath. Again, someone that is a roofer, there's all kinds of preventative stuff. Ice and water shield can be put at the bottom layer of the shingles before they put the shingle on, if you're doing a roofing job. But make sure that you seal the air leaks, you stop the warm air from escaping, the insulation is in the right spots, proper ventilation is there. And if you already have a lot of snow, and you get that big dumping of snow that we had, like a snow rake to just.
Mhm.
Now, the worst thing you can do is put chemicals on your roof shingle, or
Right.
a lot of people will go up there and throw salt on there
Yeah.
to try
A
to
good
melt
idea.
it. That will eat away at your shingle, prematurely wear it down, and now you're going to have a proper roof leak, not just ice damming happening.
Yeah. Good idea, and always a good advice to be thinking about for next year. But I like that idea to get up in the attic. This is a chance to take a look around. We did have some pretty wicked weather those last couple of months, and make sure there's nothing going on up there as well too. If we look at a little bit more of a serious note, I think in this next topic, when it comes, we've talked about this over the last couple of years: housing supply, housing demand, and the fact that right now we are in a crisis. And I know that you've been bringing this up over and over and over again. But what's happening, and where do you see where we're at right now when it comes to housing here in Canada, and how do we move forward? How do we get ahead of the game?
Well, according to Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation, CMHC, restoring housing affordability to 2024 levels, we still need 3.5 million homes.
Wow.
And it sounds unbelievable, but
Hmm.
that is
Hmm.
what Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation has just put out. And they're saying it could take up to 30 years to restore that shortage to
Yeah.
that level so that there's affordable housing. So, the key factors contributing to this is insufficient housing supply. So new
Right.
housing construction hasn't kept up. And we know that, and especially with talks of tariff and costs and land values and material costs and labor costs, builders are saying, well, we just can't build right now. So that
No.
insufficient housing, so it's a vicious circle that we're going to be in here, a cycle that we're going to be in here. But particularly Toronto and Vancouver, they are driving the values up because there's just not enough construction happening. Regulatory and zoning constraints. So
Right.
lengthy approval processes, restrictive zoning laws, it all slows down the bureaucracy, the lag, the slowdown. And I know there's a lot of efforts being put out there to speed these processes up, but it's still not good enough. It's and,
Yeah.
it, and 30 years to restore affordability, that's insane. That means that our children's children may have a chance, not even our kids, right?
Unbelievable. Right.
And again, that rising construction costs, labor shortages is huge.
Yeah.
Um, Young people are just not getting into the trades. And we've talked about this in the past. It's great to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever, your heart desires, but it's not as prestigious as that may sound. Getting a trade can be extremely beneficial and lucrative,
Yeah.
uh, especially now that there is a huge demand for it and a shortage in that. And then it's just the economic and demographic pressures that we're seeing. High immigration, urbanization have increased housing demand, putting further pressure on the market. And I know there's a lot of immigration talk and reform and that happening. Again, we don't know what all of that means at this point. But the government's response includes expanding mortgage options, raising the cap for CMHC insured mortgages from 1 million to 1.5 million, offering a 30-year amortization on
Right.
on loan terms for first-time home buyers. So that's a step in the right direction. But municipalities need to be encouraged to get that approval process streamlined, revise the zoning laws not to be so stringent, use a collaborative approach with the developers, not putting roadblocks up for them every time they're trying to do something. Like together, like that affordable housing can be created if everybody works. There's a lot of excess land out there. There's a
Yeah.
lot of schools with acres and acres. There's a lot of parkland that's being unused. And I know I'll take a lot of heat for saying that, but if it can create housing, and it doesn't have to be sold off, it can be
Right.
leased. So it can be leased land, generating income for the municipalities, allowing affordable housing to go in there. So and collaborate with developers who are willing to build on these lease lands. So there's a lot of options that are out there. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear what the opinions are of your listeners, but that, in my opinion, is a good option to try to battle this crisis that we have.
And we've talked about this for the last couple of years, and I know that have no interest in local politics necessarily, but you have made that that plea of getting rid of the red tape. And as you've just talked about again, this is, we know what the problems are, we know how we can solve them, but it really boils down to making things more efficient and being able to move people forward. You're right when it comes to that idea of a labor shortage. We have young people that are looking at more technical aspects of things, but there are there are so many opportunities if you go and take a look at everything from construction to being a millwright to being a plumber, an electrician. You can write your own ticket really these days if you can get in there and you've got those skills. I think it's a bit of a mindset shift for maybe for parents, even for younger people to say, yeah, I can see myself doing this. And I know that I'm going to be as busy as I want to be because of the fact that people are going to be coming to me to say, right? We've talked about it before. The only time you seem to call a plumber is when there's a leak in your basement and they need to get over there right away. But everything else, yeah, if you've got teenagers at home and they're not too sure what they want to do, uh, point them in the direction of the trades. I think is a great way to go, and that's a great point to make as well.
Absolutely. And we've got great schools in our region
Yes.
that
Yep.
cater to the trades. So it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
You're saving a lot of money in room and board and whatnot because you can stay at home and still get your diploma.
Yeah, and be ready to work as soon as you graduate. Faisal, thanks so much again for coming on the show today. It's always a pleasure to have a chance to chat with you and get your insight as to what's going on in the world these days.
Thanks for having me on, Brock. My pleasure.
That was Faisal Susiwala, top real estate broker, recently published author of The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, and someone who knows what he's talking about when it comes to the real estate market. Thanks to you listeners as well for joining us. You've been listening to Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio.